The wind had picked up outside as Victoria Granger wheeled herself along the sidewalk, her fingers tied on the rims of her chair, heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and determination. She had made a reservation a week in advance at the elite Azure Embers restaurant, a place known for its exclusivity and opulence, tucked neatly between high-rise buildings in the downtown district. She'd even received a call that very morning confirming her table. But as she rolled toward the front entrance, a tall valet in a slick black suit stepped in front of her, blocking her path with a curt nod. "Stop. You're not allowed inside," he said bluntly, gesturing for her to back away. "Sorry. Go away. Today is a private evening." Victoria paused, trying not to let her breath hitch. "But I have a reservation," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "It's under the name Granger." Victoria Granger. Another staff member, a woman with a tight bun and a clipboard, stepped in. "Maybe I can help you." "How do you spell that?" "Granger," Victoria enunciated slowly. The woman glanced down at the list and nodded reluctantly. "Yes, you're on the list. But I'm afraid we can't let you in." Victoria blinked. "Why?" "Your attire doesn't meet the dress code," the woman replied, not meeting her eyes. "Guests are required to wear formal footwear, heels, preferably. Not sneakers. And certainly not, well, wheels." She gave a half-hearted laugh. "There's a food truck across the street. They serve great hot dogs and never have a wait." Victoria inhaled slowly, the insult soaking in like acid. "Call the manager, please," she said, steadying herself. The woman rolled her eyes and turned on her heel. Moments later, a sharply dressed man arrived. Leon Marks, the floor supervisor, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Good evening, Ms. Granger. I understand there's some confusion," he began. "There's no confusion. I have a reservation, it was confirmed, and now I'm being told I can't enter because I'm not wearing high heels." Leon gave a tight smile. "It's standard policy, part of our brand image. I'm sure you understand." From the corner of her eye, Victoria noticed another staff member whispering urgently to Leon, and then he muttered, "Has the critic arrived yet?" "No? Okay, let me know the moment he does. Remember, we greet him warmly, first impressions are everything." Then he turned back to Victoria and said, "Look, perhaps it's best if you tried somewhere else tonight. I really must ask you to leave." Victoria's frustration simmered beneath her composed exterior as she slowly wheeled away from the imposing entrance. But she wasn't one to be easily deterred. Across the street, a young woman selling shoes from a small stand caught her eye. Her hair was wild and curly, and she had a mischievous smile as she inspected a pair of worn sneakers. "Excuse me," Victoria called, "I'm not here to buy shoes." The woman laughed, "I'm not selling anything either. Actually, I want to buy your shoes." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Why would you want those?" The woman shrugged. "I can offer you double, maybe triple their worth. It's for a cause." Hesitating only for a moment, Victoria slipped off her shoes and handed them over. The woman grinned, pulling out a wad of cash. "Here, take these." She handed Victoria a pair of soft, well-cushioned sneakers. "You'll need these more than those heels." Victoria smiled, a spark of warmth breaking through her disappointment. Returning to the restaurant, now barefoot but steady in her new shoes, she approached the hostess again. "I have a reservation," she said, trying not to let the weariness creep into her voice. "Your shoes don't meet our standards," the hostess snapped. Victoria took a deep breath. "I'm still the same person with the same reservation." The hostess smirked. "Suit yourself, but if you want to be served, you'll follow the dress code." Inside, the atmosphere was thick with whispered judgments and cold glances. Victoria was seated at a distant corner table, away from the glittering chandeliers and chatter. When the waiter approached, she ordered the same dish as the man beside her, a creamy bisque she recognized, and a black coffee. "Are there nuts in the bisque?" she asked cautiously. The waiter nodded. "Yes, but I can remove them. I'm allergic," Victoria said softly. "Is there anything else you can recommend?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. That's our signature." Victoria forced a smile. "Then I'll take it, nut-free, please." The waiter hesitated, then nodded. As she sat waiting, she placed her phone on the table and turned on the charger, needing to stay connected. The music shifted to a tango, and soon a man stood to dance, his eyes narrowing at Victoria's presence in the wheelchair. "Excuse me," he muttered loudly. "This is ruining my mood." Victoria felt the sting of humiliation but held her ground. The staff quickly intervened, apologizing to the man and asking Victoria to move to another table. "Come with me," a young waiter said softly, guiding her away. Victoria's mind raced. She knew the night was far from over. Victoria was led to a quieter corner of the restaurant, where the flicker of candlelight barely reached. The staff avoided her gaze, their smiles forced and mechanical. She glanced around the room, laughter echoed, crystal glasses chimed, and waiters hurried to attend to elegantly dressed guests, none of whom glanced her way. She caught the eye of one man at a nearby table, whose smirk told her everything. She was a disruption to their perfect world. Feeling isolated but refusing to be defeated, Victoria pulled out her phone and sent a message to her editor. "I'm in," she typed, "and the situation is worse than expected." Moments later, a sharp-faced woman approached her table, manager Helena Carrington, her posture rigid and eyes cold. "Ms. Granger," she said smoothly, "I'm afraid this table is reserved for a private party. You'll need to relocate." Victoria met her stare. "I was here first. My reservation was confirmed." Helena's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm sorry, but protocol must be followed." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Helena waved discreetly to two staff members who moved toward Victoria. "I won't move," Victoria said firmly. One of the staff hesitated but obeyed the manager's orders, gently but firmly taking hold of Victoria's wheelchair and rolling her toward the restaurant's farthest corner. As she was moved, a murmured conversation caught her attention. A group of guests whispering, making crude jokes about her and her pathetic look. Victoria's heart tightened, but her resolve only grew stronger. She realized that this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who had been told they didn't belong. She made a silent promise to herself. This story would be told, and things would change. Back at her table, Victoria overheard the waiter speaking with the kitchen staff. "Can we make a special dish? No nuts, no fuss?" The chef's voice was firm. "No, we don't accommodate that here." She sighed and took a sip of her coffee, knowing the fight was just beginning. Victoria's phone buzzed gently, breaking her concentration. A message from her editor flashed on the screen. "Keep steady. The public needs to hear this." Reassured, she began composing her notes, describing every slight, every cruel glance, every indignity she endured. Meanwhile, the restaurant's elite continued their lavish evening, oblivious or indifferent to the injustice unfolding in their midst. Suddenly, the room's atmosphere shifted. A sharply dressed man, seated near the entrance, stood up with a dismissive scoff. "Is there a sign on the door for wheelchair users?" he sneered loudly, turning his venom toward Victoria. "How did you even get in here? You're ruining my appetite with that pitiful sight." The murmurs rippled through the crowd, the heavy weight of prejudice pressing down on her like a suffocating fog. Victoria met the man's glare with quiet strength. "I'm here because I'm human. Something you seem to have forgotten." The man's face twisted with anger. Staff hurried over, apologizing profusely to him, promising to fix the situation. Victoria felt the sting of humiliation as they again tried to move her, this time farther out of sight. "Enough," she said firmly. "I refuse to be invisible." One of the waiters, a young woman named Camille, paused and looked at her with sympathy. "You don't have to put up with this," Camille whispered. Victoria nodded, grateful for the small kindness in the sea of coldness. The evening wore on, the tension mounting, until finally the door swung open and a distinguished figure entered, Nathaniel Chase, the famed food critic whose arrival everyone had awaited anxiously. Eyes turned, whispers spread, and the staff scrambled to offer their best smiles. But Victoria's gaze didn't waver. Nathaniel glanced at her with a hint of surprise but said nothing, his presence overshadowed by the mounting injustice she faced. The night was far from over, and the story was about to explode. As Nathaniel Chase settled into his reserved seat, the room seemed to hold its breath. Staff flurried about, ensuring every detail was flawless, every glass polished, every dish presented like a masterpiece. Victoria, meanwhile, kept her eyes open, noting every slight and every whispered insult aimed her way. When the waiter approached her table to take her order, she requested the same entree as Nathaniel, a rich lobster bisque, delicately spiced, paired with a dark roast coffee. But when the food arrived, Victoria's smile faded. "Excuse me," she called softly, "does this contain shellfish?" The waiter nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Her voice steady, she replied, "I'm allergic." The waiter's face tightened. "I'm sorry, but that's our signature dish. We don't have alternatives." Victoria's heart sank but she kept her composure. Then I'll just have a salad, please. Nut-free. The waiter hesitated but nodded, retreating. Throughout the meal, Victoria's phone buzzed occasionally with updates from her editor, urging her to document everything. The man nearby who had mocked her earlier had left in a huff, but the atmosphere remained tense. Nathaniel Chase finally approached Victoria's table, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Granger," he said quietly, "I wasn't aware of these issues. I assure you, I will be reporting on them." Victoria nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Mr. Chase. The world deserves to know." As the night drew to a close, Victoria wheeled toward the exit, her resolve stronger than ever. She knew the battle wasn't just about one night, it was about changing a culture. And she was ready to fight. The next morning, Victoria woke to find her inbox flooded, not just with congratulations, but with stories. Dozens, then hundreds. People from small towns and big cities. Women in wheelchairs who'd stopped going out because they were tired of the stares. Young men who'd left their dreams behind because every venue felt like a test of endurance. Mothers, grandfathers, workers, artists. All of them had something to say, and they finally felt heard. Victoria read every message, her heart swelling with both sorrow and hope. Her exposé had gone viral, exposing the deep-rooted discrimination that lurked behind polished walls and glitzy facades. The restaurant, once a beacon of high society, was now under investigation, with calls for reform echoing nationwide. More importantly, conversations about accessibility, dignity, and respect surged forward, carried by the voices of those who had been silenced too long. Victoria smiled softly. This was just the beginning.